If you thought one expansion to Dune Imperium was enough, you were way wrong. We talk about the newest expansion to Dune Imperium Immortality. Welcome back to Talking Cardboard. If you enjoy any of our content, please click like, subscribe below, leave a comment. We love interacting with the community. On this episode, we're talking about the second expansion to Dune Imperium called Dune Imperium Immortality. As always, I'm your host, Jerch. On my right is John, and on my left is Corey. Now, if you've been following our other videos, you know that we love Dune Imperium and Talking Cardboard, especially John and I. It is our favorite game of all time. So when I heard that they were coming out with another expansion, I tried to do my best to get a hold of this, even at PAX Unplugged, at Gen Con. No luck, so we had to wait till it came out at our local game stores right around the holiday season this year, and I rushed to the store to get it. It has been a really fun addition to our playing experience, but before I get way too into detail, John, what comes in this expansion?
Basically, what's in this expansion is another sideboard similar to what was in Rise of Ix. However, this sideboard is dealing with the genetic manipulation going on in the Dune universe through a faction that, unfortunately, I cannot pronounce. So if someone can put that in the comments, appreciate that. But regardless, the sideboard adds a track for the gene manipulation where you're moving a marker through various bonus actions that you can take. Some of these actions are another new track on this board, which is the Scarab action. As that goes up, you're getting victory points, intrigue cards. There is one spot where you also get 2 additional spice if you're the first one to get your marker up to that point. So really, it's adding additional avenues to victory to the rest of the game. The other element of this is as you're going up on that research track and through various cards in the Imperium deck are specimen cubes. So those go into its own little slot on the board. It's kind of similar to the research tokens from Rise of Ix, where you can then, during the reveal phase, spend those specimen cubes to buy a new market row of cards that are specific to this new sideboard.
And those cards are really powerful. They do some different things. And one of the key terms that is found on a lot of those cards, in addition to new cards in the main market, is graft. So Corey, can you go into a little more detail on what graft means?
Yeah, grafting is a really simple mechanism, but it's really cool the way it works. Basically what happens is if you purchase a card that has graft on it and use it out of your hand, you not only use the card itself, but also another card with it. What that does for you is you can choose either of the cards that you play together for one of their symbols on either of the card to send your agent to the board, and then you also get both of the bonuses on the card from the grafted card and the card you grafted with that card. So it's kind of a power play in a sense. It really kind of boosts you along. Power play, play 2 cards at the same time. Again, a very simple mechanism, an easy one for them to add, a really cool one for them to think of, and one that I feel like they could have included in the base game, but maybe was more of an afterthought type of deal. But yeah, and I really liked the fact, one of my first pros with that is that it was a separate deck that you'd have to gain specimen cubes to use to buy those cards. So they didn't get really shuffled into the mix of 200 or 300 other cards, and they would only come up every once in a while. It was really an integral part to this expansion. So for that, I liked that they kept it as a separate deck.
And another addition they had was the Family Atomics token. So at the beginning of the game, each player gets a token. So at any time, they can use that token and completely wipe the Imperium row of cards you can purchase and then replace it. One of the big complaints we've had with the original Dune Imperium was a lot of times the market would get stale or things would be too expensive that you couldn't really get the cards that were out there, or you couldn't clean it up in order to get cards you wanted. So it's a really simple mechanism, but it really helps freshen up the game when certain parts of it get a little stale.
It's another good way to cycle through the deck faster because there have been numerous amounts of extra cards added to the deck.
Yes.
To where it might get over bloated, but that design choice really helps mitigate that.
Yes, absolutely it does, and especially we like playing with 4 players, so when there's 4 opportunities to do that, then you're seeing a lot more of that deck, because I swear there's probably some cards we haven't played once out of that whole stack.
Yep.
John, when we were first talking about getting this expansion, what were your thoughts, and did this live up to your expectations?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't really know what this new expansion was due. I kind of left myself in the dark and just wanted to, get it out of the box, see what it did. I thought the research track would be less favored by people, but I think quickly people were recognizing that the payoffs later on that track are huge, because not only are you getting these little bonuses as you go up the genetic manipulation track, but once you hit certain threshold, you get your gene splicing markers, and based on if you're at the threshold for one or two of those, there's cards in the game that you're adding to your deck that then get bonuses based on how far you've made it up this track. And they're pretty powerful.
New intrigue cards, too.
And those also factor off the gene splicing symbols that you've gained through that track. So I really like that. It just, again, it's done a very good job of not being just its own thing, but it still has influence on other aspects of the game that were already there.
And do you feel it was seamlessly integrated into this game? Because we've played the heck out of this game, and with the first expansion, Rise of Ix. So do you feel like this expansion was just integrated in, or was another like layer on top?
I would say it's kind of a split, because definitely the cards that were added to the intrigue and market pretty much flow seamlessly. Now granted, if you're not playing with that sideboard, which is the new layer on top, those become irrelevant, but it's kind of a mix.
Okay. And when we were discussing getting this expansion, Corey, you seemed a little more hesitant, because at least what the impression I got is that you were concerned that this might be too much, and it might, like, I think you used the term bloat.
Yes.
That it might like get it a little too heavy or too convoluted or too many things going on. Did that ring true with our experience with this?
That's my biggest concern with all games, to be real honest, is just too much bloat, too much expansion content, too much overload. You get things mixed in so much that you get almost to a point where you're too lazy to take it out at that point. And I was really concerned with that. I really do think that it added another layer, like John said, but it also integrated the layers pretty seamlessly all in the same time, to where I don't think it really bloats it too much. And that was my biggest concern. I know you guys were more interested in picking it up to give it a shot, and I'm glad you did. But for me, this, at first glance, would have been one that I passed up on store shelves for that reason, just for that bloat reason. So if any of you are feeling the same way as I do about that, I would say to not think that and to be steered the opposite direction, because it definitely did surprise me the other way.
And when we first reviewed the Rise of Ix, that expansion, you said, made the base game unplayable. That expansion to Dune Imperium was so integral to the overall just way to enjoy that game.
Yeah.
I'm getting the idea that you don't feel that way about this expansion, but kind of compare and contrast the level of importance to playing Dune Imperium as a whole.
Yeah, the first expansion, Rise of Ix, is just fantastic. I would not play the game without it ever again. It brings in the epic mode and different variations to the game, and just that added layer that I felt was missing from the original game. Granted, I think I gave the original game still an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10 at the time. We do have a new rating scale, by the way, but that was the old ratings, and it elevated it right up to a 10 out of 10 for me with that expansion. This one, I don't feel it's necessary, but I also feel like, back to that laziness point, I don't feel like I would be compelled to intentionally pull it out of the game now that it's in it, especially with our group of players.
Yep.
I don't feel the need or the want to ever remove it to get that experience with just Rise of Ix anymore. I feel like we could pull this out with Immortality integrated into it every time, and it adds enough of that variation and flavor to it to where I'd want to keep it in it. But having said that, also, we have, like Church said, played the game numerous amounts of time to where I think we are longing for more of that depth and variability and different branching strategies and that sort of thing. And I think that's what Immortality gives us.
That's interesting. John, what do you think about Immortality, the sideboards that it added? Did that change the way that you were approaching playing the game?
It definitely does. I mean, it's another thing that you either need to decide early on, are you going to focus on this or not? And that kind of plays into other aspects of this game too, with trying to gain faction alliances or, focus on combat or, the tech tiles. It just adds another thing. And I think it's kind of nice that there's now a fourth or fifth thing to look at, because before it's like, okay, you're just playing a triangle game where you're taking two and disregarding the third. Now it's like, okay, now can I do a mix of things to kind of integrate all the things going on, or do I focus on 2 things out of the 4, 3 things out of the 4? But yeah, I think it definitely adds a lot, and I would agree with Corey that I don't think I would ever go back and take this out now, but if you wanted to make the game more reachable to a new audience, you could go through your stuff quick, take this out, go back to the Rise of Ix, which I would agree you have to have at this point, and the game will still be a blast.
Let's put it this way. I would take this out to teach the game to new players, but keep Rise of Ix in it while I'm teaching new players.
Okay.
Whereas after people become more familiar with the game and multiple plays under their belt, then I would reintroduce this and keep that in once everybody's comfortable with the game.
Okay, because we love the complexity and the different options and things you get to do in Dune Imperium, and I do agree that this was a good like spice on top, where for those groups that play this game a lot, this is going to add another layer of complexity, but not necessarily any more difficult or any more convoluted, because a lot of the advancement we were doing on those tracks was all just natural with the cards that you were playing. And there's another option you could go, but it wasn't any better or worse. It was so greatly balanced with how everything else has been integrated into this game, and we really enjoyed our experience. The scores were pretty close so far, and I think we can all really agree that this is another positive addition to a game that we really like.
Yeah, I felt like this expansion really opened it up, and I felt like that made it feel a little less gamery, but at the same time adding a little bit more complexity, which you would think would make it feel more gamery. So it kind of was playing that mental game with my mind a little bit on that, and I don't know how you guys felt on that, if you felt like it felt any less gamery, or if you just feel like we just need that many more plays under our belts with this expansion to try to figure out new strategies with it. I just felt like this made it a little bit more user-friendly or newer player-friendly, but at the same time adding more moving parts.
Which is interesting because you said if you were teaching this game to new players, you wouldn't add this in.
Right, because I think the complexity and the more moving parts would really bog down their head, and they would just sit there and go, I don't know where to even go, and I don't know what to do. But once you grasp the core concept of the game and how to play it, and then add this in, I feel like for the lesser strategically sound players, they now have more open avenues to explore, to either catch back up or gain more points in various ways, versus having such a tight strategically game that you can really get boxed out if you're playing against better players.
Yeah.
It's really toying with my mind in 2 different ways, and I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense, but that's also the type of game that I really enjoy once I've figured it out, is really tight ones, where you've got different lines of strategy, and there is a lot of push and pull and back and forth, but you know your identity, you know their identities, and then you try to manipulate within that. But this, when you kind of crack that nut here, then it makes it a little bit more experiential and open-ended, a little bit, but it doesn't fundamentally change the game. John, what are your thoughts?
I would agree with that. I think at its core, you're still trying to, work with the area control of the conflict. That's still probably the main area of focus in this game, and your deck building. Nothing's changed there. You're just giving various new avenues to build your deck or gain your bonus actions or points. So, yeah.
Do you have any other cons from this expansion?
I think Corey alluded to this a lot while we were playing, but the board with the Rise of Ix and this expansion is getting a little crazy. It would be nice if there was just some new mat you could buy that just has this all on it, because you're laying tiles on top of old locations, you're placing boards adjacent to the board, so that's not the worst thing in the world, but it would be nice if there was a way to simplify that for people that know they're going to play with everything included.
Like a second edition or something? Is that how those work?
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
Or a deluxe edition, just throw it all in with a nice
or even
player
just
mat.
a standalone mat. Just say, hey, here's the standalone mat that encompasses the full Dune experience. And
it could be like a neoprene roll out.
Yeah,
that would be
and
pretty
organize it in a way to where it all fits systematically, and
and
makes it
sense.
easier to see all the moving parts.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the downfalls of this is just trying to pronounce some of the names. I didn't read the books. I think you have, right, John?
I have read the first Dune book.
And then
I started the first Dune book.
So the new expansion, this kind of gene splicing tree, was Tlalocs or something like that.
Something.
And then they threw in another word for the top scarab track on top. And it's like, my tongue's already tired trying to read the directions and explain all this stuff and then trying to pronounce these. So it just, if that probably falls deep in line with the lore of this game, which is totally on brand, and go for it. But, you know, if I'm trying to say this over and over and over again, it starts to get taxing, and then we just abbreviated it. And then we just started calling it with
the
shorthand.
lax or something.
Yeah.
Or just call it the specimen track and the scarab track.
Yeah,
Right.
And it didn't take away from my game experience, but it was just fatiguing having to try to fumble my way through, because I want to say it right.
Yeah.
I want to honor the lore and the storytelling that's going on with this.
Yeah.
But then, you know, you just keep stumbling through it. It's like, okay, enough is enough. We're just calling this the specimen track and then the scarab track,
Yeah.
and we're just going to kind of move on with it. So let's kind of wrap this up and say our final overall take on Dune Imperium Immortality expansion and how we think it meshes with the game, and if it's imperative to buy if you already own the base game. John, lead us off.
I would say that if you own Dune and Rise of Ix already, this is a must-buy. It just takes some additional components, integrates it seamlessly into the original game, while providing you this new board with some various new avenues of deck building and getting the victory points for this game. So, highly recommend, although I would say that it's not a game that you have to make the Dune experience great.
Yeah, agreed. And I know we're very like-minded on this because this was our favorite game of all time. So adding an expansion to it, more of what we love, is a good thing. I don't think this one is quite as flavorful as or imperative as Rise of Ix as an expansion. But if you play Dune Imperium, you're going to want this because it's more of a game that we absolutely love. And if you play that game, you probably love it too. So this is a really important buy to just add to your Dune Imperium experience.
Yeah, and I would take it maybe a little step back from that and just say that if Dune Imperium is going to be a game that you pull out maybe once every couple months, so you get it to the table maybe a handful of times a year, obviously, either way, go out and buy the base game and Rise of Ix no matter what, because that is the full experience of the game, and I really think it elevates it that much. But this one is more for those groups of gamers that play Dune more than once every couple months, I think.
Sure.
If you're going to bring it to the table once a month, even, or, a couple times a month, this will add the flavor I think you're looking for, after you play the game 10 plus times. Is it essential? No. I don't think so, but it definitely gives an added flavor for those of you who have played the game so many times that you can memorize what all the cards do, and you memorize all the spots, and you've already got your strategy locked in that you try every time, or, oh, I know my backup strategy if this doesn't work. And if you've really got all the ins and outs to the game, this will add that variability that you're looking for.
Well, that's good to know. It's good to get that differing opinion. We overall love playing Dune Imperium, and we're really going to enjoy what Dune Imperium Immortality adds to our experience.